I think Michigan pulls away, becomes bowl eligible, gets their 6th win, and you guys can go to the Duke Mayo Bowl.
Yippee-ki-yay, man.
And play Idaho or something.
Jace and JP, this is the Rivalry Podcast, Michigan and Ohio State, your garbage-free college football podcast about the greatest rivalry in sports from River Radio Ministries and presented by Elevated Integrity Construction. Thanks for joining us. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're listening right now, on social media at RivalPod and at rivalpod.com. Wheel route to start us off, just break the ice a little bit here. There's a ton of stuff to get to on Michigan, Ohio State, the wider college football playoff landscape. And if you're not watching on YouTube, be sure to do that right now at RivalPod.
All righty. Does Georgia deserve any college football playoff love?
Sure they do.
I've seen a couple of people debating. They've got 2 losses. People are talking about the downfall of Carson Beck. Kirby Smart made some comments.
Here's the thing, though. Like, there's this SEC logjam right now.
Yeah.
In spots 7 to 10.
And a lot of that's going to shake out because you've got Texas A&M, and I think is it Texas A&M that are the only 2 that have 1 loss
at the end of the that sounds right. That sounds right. So. And they play each other
at the end of the year.
Yeah,
at the end of the year. So
because A&M has 2 losses, but one of those was Notre Dame to open the year, wasn't it?
I think Texas A&M only has 1.
I think they only have 1 SEC loss, but they have. I think they have a second loss, but it was Notre Dame, so it doesn't play into conference stuff. But of course Georgia deserves the love there because they just beat Tennessee.
Well, there are so many teams I think you could mismatch because if you look at all these schedules, they've kind of beat each other up.
You can do the kind of that. What do they call that circle where it's like, well, this team beat this team, but this team,
but it all kind of goes back. You don't really know who's better than who.
Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Ole Miss, not Mizzou.
And Ole Miss has 2 losses that were both close losses.
And Ole Miss, and
then they go out and they beat Georgia at 28-10.
All four of those teams could very well find themselves in the playoffs.
And I don't know if I want to play any of them.
And so that's where, and we'll get into this with Ohio State, like a lot of the talk about, well, what happens if Ohio State loses to Indiana this weekend? I saw Joel Klatt and Colin Cowherd talking about this, where Colin was saying, well, if they lose the second game, they're done. And Klatt was saying, oh, you're ridiculous. If they lose the second game, they're still in automatically. There's nothing automatic about this.
Yeah,
because
I would get nervous.
That's not me saying that they won't, but I'm saying I'm certainly not going to put my foot down and say automatically at this point in the year that a 2-loss Ohio State team is automatically in the playoff.
Not competing for a Big Ten championship.
Not competing for a Big Ten championship. We've already seen that the committee, whether it's right or not, doesn't love Indiana the way that I think they probably should. And Indiana's strength of schedule is like 101st or whatever. Mm-hmm. So if you're Ohio State, not to jump all the way to that, but if you're Ohio State, if you've played essentially 3 really good teams this year and you've lost 2 of them, there's no guarantee you slip in over Georgia or Bama or Ole Miss or Tennessee.
And I think the SEC favoritism would show in that. I think you would get.
And to be fair, the Big Ten and the SEC make up the entirety of the top 10, all plus Notre Dame, right? Like it's ridiculous. And so, if you are Ohio State or you're obviously any of these SEC teams, if you're BYU at this point with a loss, if you're Miami with a loss, you've got the hope of the conference championship in there for the automatic berth and the automatic bye. But you can't leave anything to chance here because you don't get that automatic berth. You may not get into this thing.
No, because I think you're staring at least 3 Big Ten teams that are probably going to get in over you. You're going to have Oregon, who most likely would be undefeated.
And Oregon, whether Oregon wins the Big Ten or not, Oregon's going.
Period. Indiana, right? If they were to beat Ohio State, if they lost in the Big Ten championship, they're going.
Penn State's probably
going. Who's going to go into it with just 1 loss?
Yeah.
And to me, that's just take care of business this weekend.
Yeah. You don't
even let the fate.
And that's it. You have got to, if you are still in the hunt at this point, which Mizzou is not, and I just want to be very clear about that.
If he's watching, if their coach is watching.
If you are still in the hunt, you cannot let fate decide this. So if you're Colorado, obviously at this point you've got to win out and win the whole thing, right? Mm-hmm. But teams like BYU, you've now let fate play into this. Mm-hmm. BYU had control of their own destiny, and now all of a sudden they're sitting there with a loss, going, "We better win the conference because we're not getting in otherwise."
Yeah.
Okay. So anyway, so all that to say, yes, I think Georgia absolutely deserves the college football playoff love. And I'll be curious we record Monday mornings. I'll be curious Tuesday evening where Georgia ends up ranked.
And that's kind of what I'm curious. I'm curious about that because I tried to look at the SEC and think who is. I feel like in years past, you've kind of had a good idea. It's Georgia, most likely Alabama, and then there's some B-plus level guys that you're looking at.
I'll be honest. I think it's Alabama.
That's the toughest?
Over Texas. Texas is.
There's just so many.
Texas is a good team, but I'll tell you what. It's more about, for me right now, not how did you start the year, it's how are you playing right now?
Yeah.
Now, the whole body of work has to be...
You're bound to look good against Mercer. So.
Yeah, the whole body of work has to be accounted for. When we talk about playoff rankings, it drives me nuts when and I love Reese Davis, but when he says, well, that's a September loss, then why play the season in September? Mm-hmm. Why not just play a 4-game schedule in November?
Well, and it has to matter last year as well.
But for me, if we're talking about right now, who's the toughest out in the SEC, I don't think it's Texas. I think it's Alabama.
I would agree
because
with that.
Jalen Milroe is out of his mind. Texas
kind of escaped this weekend.
Kind of escaped. My boys, I've shared before. My wife's family is just outside Fayetteville. My father-in-law is a pastor in the area. He was at the game. Like, they were close.
Oh, he went.
They were right there and couldn't quite get him. But like, that's the susceptibility that I'm not seeing a lot of susceptibility from Alabama at this particular moment. Mm-hmm. So, speaking of teams that are susceptible. Go ahead and talk about your boys in Piscataway.
They're undefeated since I put the helmet on. I just want that to be known.
Yeah, you should know that last week JP decided to put on this Scarlet Knight helmet for God knows why, and they did win again this weekend.
They did win again. Bowl eligible, back-to-back seasons.
Talk to your kids about bowl eligible Rutgers.
Back-to-back season bowl eligible.
What must it be like to be bowl eligible at this point in the year?
You're going to find out this weekend. Kyle Monangai rushed for 1,000 yards again in a season. I think they said he was the first back-to-back 1,000-yard rusher since Ray Rice, I want to say. Ray Rice was at the game hanging out and kind of passing the torch to Kyle Monangai. Dude's going to be a stud. Will he go pro? Oh, for sure.
Okay. Because I'm a normal person, I don't follow Rutgers all that much. Like
you've been around me enough.
I pay attention because you have made me pay attention to it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
He is going to be like an Isaiah Pacheco in my mind. Just a hard, gritty runner. Nothing flashy, but just a big bodied. He's going to keep his feet moving. So yeah, they're bowl eligible. We've got Illinois at home in Piscataway this week. Rutgers is 3.5-point favorites.
You know that just because the vibes are high for you right now, they're going to lose that game.
Oh, for sure.
I need you to acknowledge that.
Look, we're bowl eligible. I'm going to get to probably see a postseason Kyle Monangai game. I would be stunned if he sat because even after his year last year, he still played in that bowl game. But it could happen. You know,
they could go to Detroit. That's a short drive. Look, you could be up there.
Give me the quick lane bowl, and I'm set.
There's still always that outside chance of Michigan and Rutgers in a bowl game.
Is there though?
No, but I mean, can you imagine though?
Yeah, I would love it.
It would be.
I would love it.
That would be something.
Oh, that episode of this podcast would be insane.
It would just be unhinged. All right, so that's Rutgers. Let's talk about another underperforming team this year, and it's Michigan.
Oh,
and
you said it.
Yeah, man, because what?
It's true. It's true, but I just love... Can you say it again?
No.
Just for me?
No.
It was as a late birthday present.
I probably will at some point in this episode. Fair. Here's the thing, like, it is just wild to me, like, the switch between last year and how high the
past
vibes
3
were.
Season.
Well, because Michigan went 41-3. So in 21, 22, and 23. Mm-hmm. And by the way, before someone jumps in here and goes, well, yeah, because Connor Steins was there. Look at the guys that Michigan had coaching that are now in the NFL and look at what they're doing. Holy cow. Mike McDonald, Jesse Minter, Jim Harbaugh. Phenomenal. Look at the talent that's in the NFL. But there's no doubt. We've talked about ad nauseum on this podcast. Like Michigan 2024 edition is just misusing talent left and right. It's ridiculous. But the vibes are just way off. Like the excitement of every episode last year, especially heading into late November, because Michigan ended with Penn State, Maryland, Ohio State at the end of the regular season this last year. And that was right when the Harbaugh suspension was there. And so everything was just sky high.
Yeah. Game at Penn State too.
And now here we are going, well, we play Northwestern. I wonder what's going to happen.
With the chance to maybe potentially go to a bowl game.
And I want to make sure that this is clear. Obviously, I want Michigan to beat Northwestern this weekend. Obviously, I'd like Michigan to beat Ohio State. I'd love Michigan to make a bowl game. There's also a really tiny part of me that does not care if we're bowl eligible or not.
That's not true.
No, it is though. Because yeah, like we said last week, yeah, you want to see the young guys. Yeah, you want to see more football. I get that. But there's an emotional part of me that goes, I think I've seen enough.
But I think
pack it up, pack it in.
It's a whole new reason to get excited because all those guys aren't going to play. So you're going to see the new guys and you'll get to see a glimpse of the future disappointment of the Wolverines.
See, and then it's phrases like that. That's just unnecessary.
I just can't wait.
It's just unnecessary.
I happen to be looking forward to that so much.
In the Bible, there's this Good Samaritan story where like a man sees his rival on the road and goes, "Oh, he's hurt. Let me pick him up." You're just like, yeah, get down there.
Was he wearing a Michigan jersey? Because for sure.
See, and that's what I'm talking about. You need Jesus. River Radio Ministries.
And you guys need a quarterback, a defensive coordinator, an offensive coordinator, and the list goes on.
Joking aside, though, so Michigan plays Northwestern this weekend, and Northwestern, as I've tried to compare them to something that Michigan's played this year, like the closest I can get is maybe a less good Illinois. But if I'm being honest, it really is just Michigan in purple. Like that's really a lot of what this team is. Like I watched Northwestern Ohio State. Let's be honest, not in its entirety. I made it to the third quarter and then Ohio State pulled away. And I said, cool, well, we're going to go over to Texas, Arkansas then. But having watched Northwestern, they remind me a lot of Michigan where there's those moments where you go, okay, I see what we're putting together here. I can see, they have and not necessarily the one-to-one comparison here, but okay, they had a little bit of a quarterback rush thing going on there for a minute. They've had some success in the ground game. And I go, okay, I kind of see what we're putting together here. They put together a couple of drives that looked good. They had the opening drive that ended up being a turnover. Their second drive, they ended up scoring a touchdown, taking the lead, these long drawn out drives. I'm like, this feels like Michigan. And then all of a sudden it just evaporates and there's just nothing left there, which is what Michigan's offense has been this year, where Michigan will, look at the first drive of the Indiana game. Michigan has a just phenomenal opening drive that not a turnover, but ends up fumbling the ball, ends up having to kick a field goal, and then just nothing for a huge chunk of that game. This feels like Michigan in purple. Now, I will say, I think Michigan's defense is better than Northwestern's.
And your offense has significantly more weapons. For as non-existent as the offense is, the offense has been at times, nobody on Northwestern is coming even close to what a Colston Loveland provides.
AJ Henning would be the one name.
But
former, which by the way, like especially early on, Henning had a couple of really nice plays. I went, AJ, could you come back?
He'd be the number one receiver by far.
Nothing but love for AJ Henning. I enjoyed watching him play. Yeah, Michigan's defense is significantly better than Northwestern's. I mean, for all that we've said this over this course of the season, like Michigan's defensive line, for everything else Michigan doesn't have, defensive line is still one of the best in the country. And so I expect Michigan to have some success there. Offensively, I don't know, because Michigan continues to just not do the things that make sense.
They've got the pieces, but it's like you've said many times before, the misuse of talent. If you look across the board, I've been the first person to say this, I think Donovan Edwards is overrated. But he
certainly hasn't performed well.
But I think that you can see the talent, and that's what I think makes him so frustrating. Yeah. But I still would put him over any Northwestern player on offense.
I mean, I would too. But
same thing with Khalil Mullings and Colston Loveland,
thing, right?
That's what it comes down to.
One snap in the first half against Indiana for arguably, like I'd probably put Colston at number one, but arguably at least your best offensive player in Khalil Mullings. One snap in the first half, and then we'll sit back and we'll go, well, he just hasn't been performing the way he used to. Yeah, because he's got one snap in 30 minutes of football. You expect him to just come in and just break one off? Yeah. Like, it's stuff like that just doesn't make sense. And I was listening to some of the Michigan beat guys talk about this. They were talking about Sharon and commenting, well, Dono and Ben Hall have been practicing better. And the guy just leans back and goes, no, they haven't. It's that
amazing.
Sort of thing where I'm just like, this is the frustrating piece of this Michigan program is, yeah, you could probably roll out Khalil Mullings, hand him the ball 25 times in this game, throw in a couple of passes to Colston Loveland, and probably win this game 28-10. Mm-hmm. But they won't do that because I've been begging them to do that for weeks now.
What's your final?
Pretty close to that, but still, I have 28-13 Michigan.
Why have we? This might be a first. Because we're not the same, but we are weirdly close almost every single week.
And again, like I understand that's like, well, you're talking about both sides of your mouth. You just said this would happen if they did that. I think Michigan at the end of the day just has. I think they have more, but it's going to be a frustrating level of Michigan football because once again, we're going to see things not deployed the way that they should. I think it will still shake out about the same in the end for this particular matchup. But like I said, there's a part of me that like, yeah, I want to beat Northwestern. I don't care about this matchup. I really don't. I want to see it because it's football. I want to see Michigan win because that's my team. Duh, obviously. My main concern is not, hey, do we deploy things well against Northwestern? My main concern is, hey, coming out of a bye week, can we look more competent than we did against Illinois? Because not so much that matters for this week, because the only thing left to play for in your season comes in Columbus on November 30th. Mm-hmm. So could you please, for the love of God, Kurt Campbell, give me something that goes, hey, we're going to run Kalel Mullings more than one snap in the first half. Because if you don't do that, if you don't make those adjustments, there's already a minuscule chance of beating Ohio State this season. Let's call it what it is. There is 0% chance if you deploy Kalel the way you did against Indiana. Your only hope for this, maybe you can get away this week. Your only hope for November 30th against Ohio State is a giant dose of Kalel Mullings and you let Colston Loveland go to work. Those are the only two people that should be getting the football, period. So show me something that indicates you understand that this is the task at hand. I don't see that next week. I think it's enough to get by this week. It's a yawner. Cool.
I feel like mine's pretty close.
Does that feel discouraging to you?
I loved it.
Because I feel very discouraged.
I had my final scores 28-17. I feel like this is the game that it's just going to encapsulate the whole season. It's not going to be exciting.
No.
There's going to be one or two offensive plays that really explode. And
maybe they surprise me and they beat them 35-3. Maybe,
it's not going to happen.
Maybe, I do not.
think you said it perfectly. The Michigan defense is superior to them. They're going to be in the backfield. They're going to be getting Lausch in trouble. Northwestern's offense is not good. We saw it this past weekend. Ohio State's got a great defense, but
Northwestern's predicated on having a successful run game, which you're just not going to have against this defensive front.
And so I just don't see them being able to keep up offensively, which says a lot because the Michigan offense is terrible.
Yeah.
But I do think
we're at the point of the season where we're just going, that makes sense. They're trash.
Vibes are complete high. I do think this is almost, I hate to say it's a get back game, or a get right game, but I do think,
but it's not a top 5 team, which you're playing 3 out of 4 weeks. I just feel like
there's got to be a game this season where it almost feels like you guys play such inferior competition that it just seems like it clicks. And it's not really happened to me.
Yeah, not for a full game.
Not for a full game. You've seen glimpses of it, like the USC game to start the year, where the first half was
Minnesota for 3 quarters.
Minnesota, you had glimpses of it, but I feel like at some point those teams always find a way to do at least one complete game. Yeah. And I think that this is going to be it.
Could I take your offer? Could I bump it back a week and ask for one complete game?
No. Even then, I don't think it matters.
It might not.
28-17 is my final. I think Michigan pulls away, becomes bowl eligible, gets their 6th win, and you guys can go to the Duke Mayo Bowl.
Yippee-ki-yay, man.
And play Idaho or something.
Maybe you feel a little bit like Sharon Moore in Michigan. Yeah, we're doing this one again. Maybe you feel like Sharon Moore in Michigan. You know what you're doing is not working. You need to transfer in some help. Our friends at Elevated Integrity Construction are the portal to a successful project. Aaron and his team, they've been doing this a long time. Communicate openly. Honestly, you will be wowed at the finished project. Home, church, or business build. Go with the folks with integrity in their name. It's elevatedintegrity.com. Aaron, we're grateful to you and the team for sponsoring the podcast again this season. We are also really excited and proud to be part of the Varsity Network, powered by the folks over at Learfield, a must-have for every college football fan. Enjoy live college football games and podcasts just like The Rivalry. Free to download in the App Store and Google Play Store. Search for The Rivalry Podcast or your school and find tailored content in the Varsity Network app. Also want to mention here, especially as we come down to the end of the year, that we have got a whole bunch of game photos. We've got weekly articles. We've got a chance to support the podcast either through one of these t-shirts here.
You can get your gear ready for the game because it's going to be here in just a couple of weeks, which makes me sick to my stomach.
Rivalpod.com. See the photos, read the articles, support by getting yourself a Michigan or Ohio State custom t-shirt. These are designs just for this year as well. And so this is the first year we've had the designs. So these are super new. They look great. And you can support the podcast. Just click the support tab at rivalpod.com. rivalpod.com. And be sure to subscribe on social media as well at rivalpod.
It's time to talk about them Buckeyes.
So Ohio State, obviously with a pretty substantial win over Northwestern here. I do want to mention though, and you and I texted about this a little bit here. One of the big mantras coming in for Ohio State into this season.
We're not going to turn this into a hate on Ohio State in a blowout game where you admitted to turning it off in the third quarter because it was already gross.
One of the things that I
it wasn't.
Can I not have some joy? Can I not have some joy in this world?
Absolutely not.
Apparently not.
After what I've been through the past 3 seasons,
it has been a lot of fun for me.
Not.
No, but I think one of the mantras for Ohio State coming into this season was the phrase "leave no doubt." And it wasn't so much about doubt in a particular football game as much as it was doubt about your identity, your caliber of play. Do you feel, and again, we texted about this a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you feel like this was a leave no doubt type of performance? Or do you feel like they left stuff out there?
I feel like it's a 50-50 for me. And but I feel like,
and I think that's fair, by the way.
It's not this is exactly what I said in my text.
Yeah.
Was it a leave no doubt game from a player's perspective? No, I think anybody watching that game could tell how talented Ohio State was.
Northwestern outside of by the end of the half, Northwestern wasn't in this.
No. And we'll get into more of like the details of that game. But to answer your question, I think is there doubt that I think Ryan Day can get it done? Maybe. And I think where I stand on that, and I had it written down in my notes here, is Ohio State was never in danger of losing that game. They came out slow. They went down 7-0. And then after that, they just laid it on them. But you're looking at this and you're seeing, and you phrased it of, did they leave anything on the field? And there were 2 drives in particular where I felt like, yes. And it wasn't because of a player. It wasn't because of anything like that. It came down to the play calling and the decision making where but it's hard for me to be nitpicky even in that, because I think the play call is different in a different game. So one of the things that I pinpointed, and I think I even said this in our text thread, was it was a 4th and 2. They were in the Northwestern's territory at like I don't even know the yard line, but they were deep into their red zone basically. And it was a 4th and 2. Will Howard dropped back and launched a deep pass that was an incomplete pass, turnover on downs. Do I think that that's the play call? Do I think that that's the throw that gets made in that exact same circumstance this weekend against Indiana? No, I do not.
Yeah.
They were already up 28 to...
I was going to say,
they were up 28.
It might have been 31-7 already
No, because that's where they ended up kicking. Oh, no. Sorry, it was 4th down. So you're right. It was 31-7 at that point.
They were up by a ton.
They were up by a ton. To me, it felt like a coaching decision where he said, well, we're not in danger of losing this game. Let's open the playbook up a little bit and get more creative, which in a game of that magnitude, I'm not going to be a hater and say that was a terrible thing, but also I'm a hater and that was a terrible thing. Well, in those games, because of those same questions where people are doubting your identity, I want you to have the attitude of, we are showing no mercy.
Yeah.
I'm not going to get cute with it.
Yep.
It's 4th and 2. I'm going to trust my running backs that have ran well all game. Yep. I'm going to throw a short crossing route to an Emeka Egbuka or Jeremiah Smith, even though I would also say get them all the heck out of the game at that point because you're also up 31-7.
And I think some of it
stuff like that.
I think some of it too for you though, like, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like as someone who has sat with you over, I mean, we've been doing this 6 seasons now, who has analyzed. I mean, basically the entirety of Ryan Day's head coaching tenure at Ohio State. Even from the Michigan perspective, we have hit over and over again a lot of 4th down calls or decisions that have just made absolutely no sense. And we won't rehash all of them, but that's why I think you see something like that and you go, hold up, what are we doing here? Because
the decision to go for it.
Yeah, but
it's not a knock against that.
We've talked about the Georgia stuff from 22. We've talked about it's 4th and 1 at Notre Dame. Let's run Emeka Egbuka on a jet sweep. Just we've seen stuff like that, and even in the Penn State game, would end up being a really critical play where it was Will Howard throwing a pass to Jelani Thurman. Where it's like, how is that the play? Like that ends up being a massive play.
Yeah.
So I think it's stuff like that if you're a Buckeye, you go, I like that we're going. I still don't love the decisions we're making.
I do think that he's done a better job this year of showing some aggressiveness.
He's been far more aggressive, which if you're a Buckeye, is really good.
I've kind of pleaded for the past year. So I'm not trying to go back and say he should have kicked it or done anything stupid like that. I like the idea of going for it on 4th down there. I just don't like the play calling. I know that's a Chip Kelly thing. I just would have liked to see do what you're going to do against the teams that are going to matter, even if it's against a team where you're clearly ahead. I would have liked to have seen a better drawn up play. something to actually pick up the first down, keep the drive going, because you hear that chatter after games like this, where you're going to have people that are Michigan fans or Indiana fans or whoever. You're going to have the committee where now this is thinking way too far into the future. But let's say Ohio State does drop Indiana. To me, that's a decision that could come to haunt you, because now you got 2 losses. And they're going to go, well, you didn't have that impressive of a win. It was only 31-7 against Northwestern, when you could have gone and scored a couple more times and a 45-7 or something. You know, but you also now those style points do matter.
This is what we call the black pit of negative expectations. Welcome, because I hate it here. Up until last year, that's where I was at, and here's the reality. The reality is that at the end of the day, Ohio State won a very comfortable game against Northwestern. The disappointing piece, I think, is, because I consume this stuff because I love it, as the Fan was talking here in Columbus 97.1. They were talking on Friday last week about blood in the water and annihilation. Like, we got to make a statement, whatever. And I look at it and go, it was a comfortable win, but it was kind of pedestrian. I didn't feel the annihilation. I didn't feel the blood in the water. Like that killer mindset thing that they were trying. And I get it's sports talk. You're trying to hype up, but I didn't feel any of that. And I went, yeah,
it's tough
they won.
When it's a 31-7.
But you also had that against Purdue. So none of it really matters.
No.
Here's the deal. If you're an Ohio State fan, that doesn't make a difference right now. Right now, you've got an Indiana team coming in who is 10-0, best season. They've been playing football since 1899, have never won 10 games in a season. So they are coming off a bye week, 10-0, just beat Michigan, a team that, for 30 years or whatever it's been, I think they managed 1 win during the COVID season with Michael Penix Jr. So basically, look at it this way. They have not beat Michigan in front of fans since like the 1980s until a couple weeks ago now. Yeah. So if you're Indiana, you're coming in hot. Indiana also did not play their best game against Michigan. So they faced like a little bit of adversity for really the first time. I don't count 10-0 to Michigan State as adversity because they won that game by 40.
Yeah.
But they faced a little bit of adversity for the very first time, overcame it, didn't play their best game, still got a win to the bye week. And don't you think, I know Curt Cignetti is going to, kind of do the whole Nick Saban, it's rat poison, don't listen to the outside voices thing. But don't you think that these college students are coming in going, committee doesn't respect us?
I think they're now 5th?
Yeah, I think so.
5th.
We're ranked 8th to start. Got ranked 5th because a couple teams fell. I mean, you can't tell me that these guys aren't coming in knowing we are not going to get respect from anybody. We're going to have to come in and earn it, which fair. But they've got something to prove in this game, even more so possibly than Ohio State does.
Yeah, I think it's equal. That's why I think it's going to be such a great game.
I don't think the stakes are any lower for either team. The stakes are equal, but I think Indiana's got probably more to prove than Ohio State does.
See, and I think the opposite for the Buckeyes. I think both of them have different reasons for coming in fired up. Yeah. Ohio State, when Curt Cignetti first took over, he was speaking in front of the fans, and one of the first things he said was, Purdue sucks. And everyone cheered.
Which fair.
In fact, they are terrible. Yeah. Then he said, and so does Michigan and Ohio State.
Which again, was bold in the offseason for the national champions and a top 10 program.
Yeah. And I like it if you're an Indiana fan, but if I'm an Ohio State guy, which I am, but if I'm a player specifically, and I'm looking at that, and I'm Ryan Day, and I'm looking at that, I want to go beat the brakes off of them.
Yeah.
Because
do you think Ryan Day actually cares about that, though?
Yes. Yes and no. Well, I think he cares in the same way that a Jim Harbaugh would. I think he knows how to use it.
I mean, there's a reason that the soft team allegations have stuck around. Is because Ryan's let it. He's let it dictate some of the way he coaches.
But I think that there's a way. I think that's a classic sports motivator. Is you play that clip, you let people know. I think they're also hearing the chattering. I know right now they're like 11.5-point favorites. The last I checked, which was, I believe, late last night, they were still 11.5.
They're firm 2-score favorites, and that line's not going to shrink.
Double-digit favorites. But I think a lot of the outside noise from what I'm hearing is that people are basically calling this for an Indiana team that's going to come in and win.
See, I don't know where you're reading that. I don't see that.
I have seen it all over.
What do you think about the game though? Okay, like let's prognosticate a little bit here. From the Indiana side, from the Indiana side, I mean, Curtis Rourke is going to be the big storyline, right? This is I don't know where he's still at, but going into the Michigan game, at least, I think he was tied for 6.
Him and Will Howard have very similar seasons
in the Heisman betting stuff.
Like him and Will Howard have had identical seasons. They've both thrown for over 2,000 yards. They've got like 24 touchdowns and 4 or 5 interceptions. Their stats are very similar, and almost identical in the same attempts and completions. So like they have played even.
Yeah.
I do think it's fair to bring up their strength of schedule. I don't think they've really, in my mind, and I said it the week that they played, Michigan was their toughest battle.
Yeah. For sure.
And I thought they were tested.
Yeah.
So I haven't gotten a good gauge on them, but I do know, and this is something I wrote about on my blog. You can check it out on our X on Twitter.
On our X? Please stop.
I don't know. What do you call it?
Also, do we need to get Blue Sky now too?
Sure. Why not?
Anyway, we don't have that yet.
At Rival Pod, when we do inevitably get that too. But you can read that in my blog, because I basically said, in my mind, what this comes down to, Indiana's got, I don't know where they stand offensively. I know they've got 43 points on average. They're one of the top.
Heading into the Michigan game, and I have not checked since then because I gave up caring about sports and football.
I know they're top.
They were ranked 3rd in the country.
Yeah, so I mean, you've got an explosive offense. But what really stands out to me is their defense, and a particular part of their defense is the run defense. Right now, they're only allowing about 72 yards a game. This has been a banged up offensive line that I thought has still performed well.
They have.
But I think that is going to be the deciding factor for me this weekend is, and I talked about it last week on the episode. This is where I think it's going to be key that you're going to have fresh legs in Judkins and Henderson, is games like this where you're going to have to rotate those guys in and out to keep them fresh. And you're going to have to win the battle of wearing them down. Which team wears down first? The depth chart's really going to show. I was reading some facts about this matchup in particular. Since 1989, Ohio State's record against Indiana is 30-0-1.
Pretty good.
Pretty good record. Would love to that go to 31-0-1. It is, the last time these two met was a top 10 matchup. Indiana had Michael Penix as their quarterback. It was that COVID year in 2020. It was at the Shoe. The Buckeyes took a ginormous lead and almost blew it. They ended up winning by just a touchdown. Justin Fields was the quarterback. It was a crazy game. I would love nothing more than for this to be a Wisconsin of 2022 where it was super hyped up. And you and I were there. It was actually my first Buckeye game ever in person.
Was that the first one you covered?
First one I covered. Okay. First one. It was a night game at the Shoe.
That's right, because I made fun of you because I'd been to more Ohio State games than you.
And I had never had the chance to go. Yeah. And Ohio State just absolutely whipped them. And so I would love a nice, easygoing game. For as much as I talk about the strength of schedule with Indiana, I don't want that to seem like I don't respect them.
Well, and because I think
you
there's
play who's in front of you, and they've not only won, they've handled business.
Yeah. And there's a reality here too, where every team in the country, every single team in the country has had a game where you kind of looked at it and went, okay, what was that? Mm-hmm. Oregon had one against Wisconsin this past weekend. Is Oregon a good football team? Yeah, they're really good.
But
they had a rough outing with Wisconsin, which shouldn't have been close. You could say Indiana and Michigan would be that one. Ohio State, Nebraska, for gosh sakes, should not have been close. So I mean, you're going to see that where I think this game is interesting is I think number one, I think that's a great note on the defense of Indiana for the rush defense, because we saw that be a big problem for Ohio State in the Nebraska game. We also, and so the rush game, so much of your success on offense obviously is predicated on the rush game. So that will make a difference. We've seen Will Howard look really good. We've also seen him make some poor choices if the run game gets stuck too.
It's true for anybody, but you saw the start of the recipe. You saw the first ingredient for how do you beat a team like an Ohio State, and Michigan had done it the previous couple of seasons. And that is, you don't give them the ball. And you saw that against Northwestern, where in the entire first quarter, Ohio State had one drive.
Yeah.
And then they did nothing with it.
Yeah.
And then after that, once they actually got the ball, their next 5 possessions all ended in points.
Yeah.
And I think that even happened earlier this year against, I want to say, the Nebraska game. It happened against Penn State, where I thought the first quarter, the very first drive, they went on like an 8 or 9 minute drive. Yeah. And they just did not give Ohio State the chance to score, because I don't think defensively, I just don't know if it matters. I think Ohio State is going to get their points. It's, can you limit the number of opportunities they get to score those points?
Yeah. This is such a tough one because I could see this. Here's the only thing I can't see happening. The only thing I can't see happening in this game is Indiana's not blowing Ohio State out. Like that, we can all agree on that, right?
Safe, yeah.
Like Indiana's not going to blow out Ohio State. And if we get to run this clip back, God love it.
I hate it.
I give it my blessing.
This would be my last episode.
That is, oh, please.
Manchester me.
But like outside of that, I could see anything. I could see Ohio State winning a close one. Could see Indiana winning a close one. I could see Ohio State blowing Indiana out.
Yeah.
Like any of these things are possible. Here's where, if you're Indiana, here's what you're looking at. Because I'm the world's biggest Hoosier this week. I need something good to happen in my life.
You have your Lions, hush.
Oh yeah, the 9-1 Detroit Lions. Talk to your kids about the Lions routinely blowing teams out. What world are we in? It cost us Michigan, but that's fine.
That's fair. We'll allow it.
If you're Indiana, here's what you're looking at. And I thought again, Joel Klatt show is a great follow, by the way. If you're not following, not subscribing to his podcast, that's a free shout out, whatever. Is he really emphasized the way that Curtis Rourke throws the back shoulder pass and targeting the corners of Ohio State. Mm-hmm. Igbinosun is due for at least one, if not three, PIs or holding penalties.
Denzel Burke both.
And Denzel Burke, I'll tell you what, watch both of these guys just absolutely torch the Michigan offense.
Would love nothing more.
But against a competent passing offense, I mean, Denzel Burke came back to beat Michigan to win the whole thing. Yeah, but he came back to boost his draft stock. Mm-hmm. It has not gone up. It has gone down.
Yeah, he was supposed to be a first-round pick. I'm not sure where he's projected now, but he's still probably high.
He's going to get picked second or third round still because he's got the skill to develop, but he has not played well. He's just not played well. So if you're Indiana, you can target either of those guys. He got taken advantage of by Oregon, and Igbinosun he struggles. He struggles. He's got a handful of guys' jerseys the whole time. I would keep targeting that. So I'm curious to see. The Ohio State secondary has not impressed me at any point this year. Which again, if Michigan had a passing quarterback, I'd be real excited about that, but we don't.
However, they don't.
But I think for teams that do, I think that the Ohio State secondary is pretty vulnerable. So I think that's an advantage, I think, for Indiana. The other thing I'd say too, along with that, is Ohio State has struggled against good quarterbacks. They struggled against Dylan Raiola in Nebraska. Raiola didn't have a fantastic game.
Raiola didn't do anything though.
Nebraska was leading that game.
Not because of him.
But did they struggle with it though?
Not with him.
Did they struggle with Dylan Gabriel?
Dylan Gabriel's the only one I'll give it to you because they didn't struggle against Drew Aller. They didn't struggle against Raiola. They actually shut both of them down, and they had maybe one of their worst outings of the season against Ohio State's defense.
I'll be curious to see. At the end of the day, I'll be curious to see what this Indiana offense looks like. The key for Indiana is going to be their offense is going to have you nailed it, right? Like this is not rocket science. The offense is going to have to score points. Mm-hmm. If you get there's those situations that you watch and go, okay, if this isn't going well for Ohio State, this is going to be a problem. It's going to be running the football. Ohio State's this should be offense on offense. If these offenses, if one of them starts to struggle, it's like, oh, Indiana's having trouble moving the ball. It's over.
Yeah.
If Ohio State suddenly is like, oh, Ohio State's not running the ball real well here, that's going to be a problem for you.
The good news is, even if you have to rely on your passing attack, having a man named Jeremiah Smith and having another guy named Carnell Tate and then also another guy named Emeka Ibuka greatly helps increase your chances.
It does, but also Ohio State's trouble over the last few seasons hasn't been a lack of elite wide receiver talent. It's been a shaky offensive line, right? Like particularly for Michigan, when they've played Michigan, the problem hasn't been, well, we just don't have enough 5-star wide receivers. The problem has been we don't have an offensive line and we can't stop the Michigan run game. Well, I think
some of it's been defensive. Some of it's been the defensive side.
For sure.
Because they've still put up points. They've still been in the games. I think this is a classic case. You look at this across the board. I think going off of what your expectations were, I don't see this being high scoring. I think in my mind, it's going to be a little gritty. Indiana's got the offense to where they can do those Michigan-esque longer drives, kill the clock, limit Ohio State's chances.
They also, though, I'll tell you what, more than that, I mean, they score quick. I would disagree with you there. I think this is a far more tempo team.
They do against bad, inferior opponents.
Well, we'll find out with that secondary, won't we?
But I think if you're watching, and I think they'll take scoring quick, but I just think if you're looking for how to beat this Ohio State team, it's got to be those long time-killing drives that end in 7.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with that too.
And that's how you win. Because if you're scoring quick, Ohio State's just going to go down and strike right back. I just think this offense is too high-powered. This is a game that I would love to see the silver bullets finally return. I feel like we've had glimpses of them here and there. The defensive performance against Penn State, you saw glimpses of it last year where they had really good defensive outings. This is a game where I really need to see them get some pressure on the quarterback. I need Curtis Rourke to be uncomfortable. You can't allow him to sit back there.
Which Michigan was in the second half had a lot of success there.
And it's where I got to see guys like Jack Sawyer. I got to see Ty Hamilton. I've got to see, honestly, even some Latham Ransom safety blitzes. I've got to see people in the backfield
against teams not named Northwestern, not named Purdue. Yeah. There's got to be something here.
I got to see in the big games.
And I agree, by the way. Penn State was a good outing. However, there's also been plenty of opportunities over this season, the last few seasons, where they just disappear in big games.
And this is a game where you've got to almost treat it like a Penn State, where you can give up yardage, you can't give up touchdowns.
Correct.
You've got to have the bend don't break mentality. And so my final score of this, I got a close one. I'm going to hate it. I have 24-20 Ohio State.
I've got a few more points than you do. I got a few more points.
I know for who.
I'm going to still take Ohio State.
Okay, that surprises me.
I mean, my heart wants to pick Indiana, but like, you're still 2 touchdown underdogs to Ohio State.
And I would love for that to happen. The disrespect there is crazy. I even said it when they first announced it was only like 10 at the time.
Listen, there's a difference here because I want to make sure that I'm being consistent. There's a difference between the committee has not appropriately ranked Indiana to this point. Ranking them at 8 to start off, I think they are. I think they're probably good now at 5.
Mm-hmm.
By the way, I would have them at 3 for the record right now.
Oregon, Ohio State, and then Indiana.
Yep, that's right. That's right. I'd be fine with that. That's right. Have them. At the same time, there's also a reality of saying, okay, so you've got a top 3, top 5 matchup here. Who's got the edge? And I think for as much as I don't trust Ohio State's secondary, that offense is just so darn good. 34-24. So I think this is it for Ohio State. Okay, so I think it's a tight game. I don't think anybody gets blown out. I think at the end of the day, Ohio State has enough to get it done. It will make you uncomfortable. And what does that mean about Indiana? It means they're still a really good football team.
Yeah,
it means that they probably still sneak their way into the playoff as well. They should.
In a close loss like that,
the only way Indiana does not deserve a playoff spot is if they just get hammered by Ohio State.
Yeah, if it's like Wisconsin, where it's 45-3 or something.
It's 30. Absolutely. It's 38-13.
I will drive to Curt Cignetti's house myself and say, "Google us, we win."
Then okay, now we've seen. Okay, you played one top 10 game and you got blown out. Now there's an argument for, you might not get in here. 34-24, if you're Indiana, no, you won't take it in one sense, but you'll also take it because you are probably going to get
progress in the first year.
And you're going to make the playoff at that point too. So I've got 34-24 there. College football playoff, the one thing I want to say on this is that we mentioned this with Georgia. Like I'm so darn curious where and how the College Football Playoff Committee ranks, the kind of that logjam of SEC teams. I'm very curious what they do now with teams like BYU. I'm very curious what they do with SMU. I'm curious what they do with Miami because Miami's sitting there. The good thing for Miami is that they've got a path to the ACC championship game. They can still get the bye, right? Like they're going to be okay. SMU, same thing. Don't deserve a playoff spot maybe, but like
BYU or SMU.
I don't know that either of them do at this point. I mean, I think
one of them will get in at a lower seed, but
it's going to be SMU or Miami. I don't think it's going to be both.
No, it'll be Miami.
It'll depend. I mean, assuming those two meet because SMU's ACC now, right?
Yes.
Okay. Listen, we've realigned conference. I don't know who's with who at this point.
I always forget Texas is even in the ACC
is going to get one team. The ACC will get one team in. That's it. Big 12 will get one team. And it could be BYU. It could be Colorado. You want to know my spicy take here? Is that it might be Arizona State.
I love that.
Arizona State sitting at 8-2.
Only 2 losses. Upset over the weekend.
Arizona State plays BYU this weekend.
And is favored.
And is favored.
By 3.5.
Arizona State could slip their way in. Now, I would have to go back and do a little more research. See, have they played Colorado? Do they play Colorado? What has happened?
I would love nothing more than to come onto this podcast and have you talk about a playoff hosting Colorado game.
And really, that's
after all the stuff.
And really, that's what I care about more. Is not if Arizona State gets it. I just need somebody.
Oh man, run him his theme music.
Somebody keep Colorado out of the playoffs.
I want it so bad.
I cannot. Well, of course you do, because everyone wants to play Colorado in the playoffs.
I did see something. One of our wheel route questions that we didn't get was which projected first round playoff game interests you the most. And I was reading an article from the New York Times, and there were two games that I would absolutely sign up to watch 10 times out of 10 times. And I think the one you would actually love. The first one was Indiana versus Notre Dame in Bloomington. I would clear my schedule to watch that game, to watch Marcus Freeman cry on the sideline.
I've also seen that. I've also seen that one is Indiana hosting Alabama.
I've seen that too. I would also love that.
Can you imagine?
But in this particular article, they had Colorado winning the conference championship, where they would host a playoff game as the number 4 seed, which would mean, if projections have been correct, almost every single one I've seen has had that 5-12 spot being Ohio State and Boise.
Yeah.
If Ohio State were to win, that would mean a Colorado versus Ohio State playoff game. And I know internally there would be such a fire battle inside of you on who you root for.
Oh, no, there wouldn't.
Colorado, would you be Coach Prime?
Theme music. Oh, 100%.
I want that to happen. Oh, man.
I would listen. If Colorado lines up against Ohio State in the playoffs, I will buy one of those like old buffalo hat things, and I will wear it on this podcast.
I want that to happen so that I can watch Travis Hunter and Shadur Sanders play in person.
Because you want to talk about a team that might give us secondary nightmares? That's one. I don't know if they would have enough.
Travis Hunter's nasty.
I don't know if they'd have enough to beat Ohio State, but I'll tell you what, I would. Here's the thing. I can't with Colorado.
I love it so much.
I can't with Colorado.
I love it.
But no, I'm genuinely curious about what happens with BYU.
Yeah.
Because here's kind of the sneaky part that I think people forget. I believe it is the 5 highest ranked conference champions. Mm-hmm. So I believe, don't quote me on this, but I believe there's a scenario where you could have Big Ten, SEC, ACC, and I believe you could also end up with like the American in there as the 4th.
Gross.
I guess you'd still end up with a Big 12 in there too. So I guess they would still get a team in, but maybe not as a first round bye though. Mm-hmm. There's so much chaos that can happen the last 2 weeks here. Again, this is where at the end of the day, just don't let fate decide this.
No, I just can't wait.
The other big game, by the way, this weekend is Notre Dame and Army.
15.5
at Yankee Stadium. Yeah. And that leads us into stupid genius, because I cannot take. Listen, I am all aboard Army. Not only knocking Notre Dame out of the playoff, but that would almost, not quite, it would almost guarantee Army a playoff spot.
It should.
You would think that it would rank them ahead of Boise as the group of 5, because Boise has struggled with Nevada. They struggled with San Jose State for a huge chunk of that game. That would be a better win than anything Boise has. I think you would see Army jump Boise State. How incredible would that be? You could see, listen, we've joked about me giving up my spleen for Michigan touchdown yards. I would give a spleen right now.
Just
any spleen for a 13.5 minute Army touchdown drive in the shoe as a 5v12.
That won't happen.
Oh, can you imagine? Anyway, Notre Dame's probably going to beat the brakes off Army, but
not in my book.
You take them as your stupid.
I sure
genius.
did.
You idiot.
Army over Notre. I gotta have weren't you right this past week?
No.
Who was yours?
I took Mizzou over South Carolina as like 12.5 point dogs, and they blew it at the very end of the game.
Okay.
They blew it at the very end of the game. No.
Devastating. I was also not right. So.
Cool. So you took 15.5 point underdogs in Army.
I did originally have Pitt over Louisville, I think. Is it Pitt versus Louisville?
I don't know. I stopped caring.
Whoever Pitt plays this week was my original one, and
both of those teams are terrible.
In the heat of the moment this morning, I changed it, and it is Army over Notre Dame.
I will give up losing stupid genius this year to get that correct. Army over Notre Dame at Yankee Stadium would just be.
I love it.
That'd just be scenes, man.
I would love it.
I don't know how you rush the field on a baseball stadium. I guess you could.
Not advised. After having watched a football game on a baseball field, first off, one of the worst camera angles I've ever seen watching a game.
Yeah,
the Carnell Tate touchdown, I still don't know what it looks like because there were about 5 guys with their hands. It felt like I was
angle is on there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's the same angle that I saw Ohio State fans use to prove to me that JT made the first down in 2016 with a little squiggly yellow line. I'm like, yeah, that seems legit. All right, my stupid genius is not quite that stupid, but it's still a spicy one. Are you ready? Speaking of shaking up the college football playoff, are you ready for this one?
Throw it at me.
Minnesota.
I knew it.
Over Penn State.
I knew you were going to do that. I don't know why.
I like the way Minnesota's playing right now.
And it's at home.
It's at home. It's a 3:30 kick, 12.5-point dogs to Penn State. Yeah, Penn State's playing good football. I like the way Minnesota's playing right now. I think this is a team that believes they can get it done, which is not something that you'd be able to say about Minnesota late into November. You don't know that.
They won't. The Golden Gophers are not going to beat Penn State.
I've got Minnesota here. And that at that point, you have just completely thrown the door open, right? Mm-hmm. Penn State's then finished. That basically guarantees Indiana a spot in the playoff as well, regardless of what happens.
I think they're in
and it opens up a whole host of other wild stuff out there too, right?
Is that why you chose it for the chaos?
What's that?
Is that why you chose that was for the chaos?
I mean, partially for the chaos, yeah, but I also legitimately think that Penn State just has these moments where they look really, really good, and then they have these moments where they go, what am I watching here? Mm-hmm. And so I think this is one of those, what am I watching here? And Minnesota has also had moments where they look, I'm saying that the Minnesota looking good moment and the Penn State, what am I watching moment collide in one game.
I would love
Give me the Golden Gophers on this one. You got anything else here? A massive, massive game, obviously, in Columbus. We are going to be there covering the game on Saturday in Columbus. College Game Day is going to be there. Big noon kickoff, which is the whole thing for people. Get over it.
Who cares?
Get over it. Watch the football game and enjoy it. So we will be covering that on social media at Rival Pod, Instagram, Twitter. Should be really, really good. So be sure you're following there. Subscribe wherever you're listening right now. Also, Michigan plays Northwestern. So
if you don't want to watch that, Rutgers plays Illinois. But that's at noon, so you're not going to be paying attention to that. But.
Yeah, well, at least I've got something to watch in the 3:30 slot.
The Rivalry is a production of River Radio Ministries. Want live updates from the show? Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at RivalPod. To learn how to support the show, shop our merch, and read our blogs, visit rivalpod.com. Make sure to follow us wherever you're listening now. And if you like what you're hearing, tell a friend so they can listen too.